Do you have problems playing and editing 10-bit 4:2 footage in your Davinci Resolve? If so, I have some hints for you. There is a common opinion that Nvidia cards like this one are the best thing you can get for Davinci Resolve, especially if you work with demanding codecs like H.264 and H.265. And it is true to a degree. Most of YouTube channels claim that Nvidia is great for Davinci because it has hardware decoders and encoders for these codecs. But is it true that every file in this format is decoded via hardware? Not really. Yes, it's true that my PC got its second youth when I upgraded my RTX 2070 to RTX 4080, but when I got A7 IV and started recording my footage in 10-bit 4:2, my Davinci Resolve became quite choppy. I asked YouTube again, and the answer was it's because the long GOP format I used with my H.264, which is more demanding than all intra format, all I. But even RTX 2070 was fast enough to decode 8 stream of long GOP from my Sony A7 IV. So what is all of the sudden much more demanding for such a powerful video card like RTX 4080? Shouldn't it be able to decode 150 megabits per second video stream? But A6600 long GOP was 8-bit 4:0 encoded with I think 100 megabits per second bandwidth. Davinci was going through it like knife through butter, but all of the sudden it started to be choppy even with one long GOP from my A7 IV, especially if footage was sped up. So as YouTube suggested and some Davinci gurus, I started recording my 10-bit 4:2 footage in all-I format. I had to buy very expensive cards, V90 SD cards and CF Express ones, and it stopped being very choppy, but the reason is totally different than what they claim. Sure, all-I format is less taxing to decode, but it is not for the GPU decoders because they do not support 10-bit 4:2 at all, and actually my old CPU is doing all the work. That's why it cannot handle H.264 long GOP 10-bit 4:2. It is too old and not powerful enough, while Nvidia decoders do not matter here because they are doing nothing. Let's check it together, shall we? So I'm not recording a screen on computer directly to not impact the performance of the PC. That's why I'm recording on external camera. Maybe it's not the best quality, but I think you would see what I mean. So this is the timeline from one of my latest videos, and I quite usually compare the shots, especially for in the lighting videos, and here also. So all this footage was recorded in 10-bit 4:2 long GOP, and let's see how that plays. Maybe I would also check what is the play. It's half, so let's do full timeline resolution 4K, and I got 4 clips. All these clips are reduced in size to 50%, and that's why I have 4 of them. And here is the performance of the GPU, and let's see, here is the decode, so decoding engine, and let me play the clips. And as you can see, the decoding is doing nothing. Sure, there is still utilization of the GPU up to 67%, but now it's like 7. And you could see how choppy that is. It jumped, so it was really choppy. And if we switch to the CPU, then it is stopped now. If I start playing, first of all, it's like 4.5 frames per second here, and the CPU is utilized up to 100%. This footage from ZV-E10 Mark II, also long GOP 10-bit 422, and it's the same story.
it is like 15 frames per second or less, and it is whole CPU. But here is the DJI 10-bit 420 footage, but it is H.265, so different codec, actually more demanding codec. And let's see what happens here if I try to play 4 clips at the same time, and it plays 25 frames per second easily. It claims 28, but this is the bug. So it is all fluid, and CPU is utilized at 20 something percent, 22, but the GPU decode is doing heavy lifting here because Nvidia decoders support 10-bit 420 in this H.265 codec. So here is the clip. It is maybe I will try to do it a bit bigger. So it is H.264 8-bit 420. This is footage from A6600, some random clips. And what is the playback here? It is smooth, 25 frames per second. It is played from the NAS, and you can see each clip is smooth, and the decode engine is doing heavy lifting. So it is like 55% utilization of the GPU, and CPU is just doing nothing. It's almost idle at 12-20% tops, probably. It's like 12-13. In the case of 8-bit 420, it is great to have Nvidia GPU, but in terms of 10-bit 422 long GOP, it's not. So this was also long GOP. This is the only format A6600 supported. And here I have all I ungraded, so it is H.264 10-bit 422, and again 4 clips. If I play them at the beginning, they're a bit choppy, but then it is 25 frames per second, and the GPU decode is not doing anything. The GPU is utilized by 65% because it is displaying that stuff and copying and whatever, and actually the CPU is decoding the footage from the codec, but since the OLI is lighter to decode, is much easier to decode, so it takes only like 65% of the CPU tops. But the problem with 10-bit 422 OLI codec is that you have to use very expensive V90 cards or CF Express cards to be able to record in this format. So these cards are like 10 times more expensive than V30 cards. You can record long GOP 10-bit 422. So it is really expensive stuff. And also this codec takes 42% more disk space. So even if you got these more expensive cards, then you eat the storage much faster. So actually 256 gigabyte V90 card is able to record 2 hours and 10 minutes of this 4K all I 10-bit 422 footage, which is not much. And here I have graded codec. It takes a bit more from the CPU. At least at the beginning it's like 66%, 64%, but it's not much of a difference, but it plays quite smoothly. If this would be like sped up by 200%, maybe it won't be that smooth, but at normal speed it is okay, so it's not a big deal. And again, GPU is not decoding that because it is 10-bit 422 format, which Nvidia decode engine does not support. what else I got here? If you're in States, you are kind of lucky because you can record H.265 10-bit in 24 frames per second with Sony cameras. Here in Poland, when we use the PAL, 20 frames per second are not available in Sony cameras, which is weird. I have only 50 frames per second option. I can switch to NTSC and use 24 frames per second, but that might be quite annoying with the flicker. So it's not it's really not an option for me here. But let's see what happens if we play this H.265. It is 10-bit 420 and it is ungraded. So I'm playing that. The chop in the beginning, but it's cached, it's played from NAS, and decode engine is actually doing heavy lifting here. It's like 55% of the CPU for streams, and the CPU is just up to 20%. So the CPU is doing nothing. Actually the GPU is doing heavy lifting of decoding this. And what else is here? And here is, for some reason this clip is graded. So here is ungraded 10-bit 422 H.265. And what happens here? The difference only is Luma decoding is 422. So now you can see how choppy it is. It's like 4 frames per second. The decode engine of Nvidia card is doing nothing. And the CPU is at 100%, but it struggles really hard to decode this. It's like 4 frames per second, so it is unusable. So yeah, anything 422 is not decoded by Nvidia, but it's decoded by software and the CPU. So here is the same footage graded, so 420 H.265. What happens if I play it? It is smooth, 25 frames per second. The GPU is decoding that. It is busy at up to 60 something percent, 67, and the CPU is doing nothing. So H.265 10-bit 420, it is fine, except there is no 25 frames per second in Sony cameras, so I'm kinda ducked. I risk some flicker if I record in 24. I know that I can change the shutter speed to eliminate the flicker, but this additional step during recording, so it is annoying. So actually it's not the great choice. The plus is that this is like 100 megabits codec, so it is much more compressed and takes much less space. It takes even much less space, like 40% less than LGOP H.264. So that's the pro of this, but I cannot really use it because of 24p here in Poland. If you're in States, then you should be okay, and actually you can record this on V30 cards, so I guess that's your choice. Although it is only 420, if you go to 422, then it is not decoded by hardware of your Nvidia decoders, so that's a bummer. So what about Mac? I only have MacBook Air, but let's check. I imported the same timeline there, so let's see how that goes on Mac. Okay, again on Mac, I'm not doing OBS recording of the screen or macOS recording of the screen. I'm just recording from the camera to not impact the performance. And the main question is if Mac media engines actually decode any of 10-bit 422 codecs. I'm not sure about M1 because this is the basic M1, the lowest the lowest model, because this is MacBook Air M1, the only Mac I have at the moment to test it. Maybe I would test on different Mac later, but at the moment today I only have this one. And the main question is if media engines actually, in that case, I'm not even sure there is a media engine. I think there is one media engine. And actually media engines in Macs can decode ProRes up to 444, but I cannot find anything to confirm that they also decode H.264 or H.265 in 10-bit 422 or 444. So it's hard to tell. Anyway, this is H.264 8-bit 422, and I wonder. And you can see the performance during the playback, and it's hard to say if this is a media engines or just GPU, but GPU is taken up to 50%, and the CPU, it depends which cores, it is 50, 100 to the E-cores are up to 100%, but performance cores are around 50-60%, and this is 4 clips H.264, but I have to check what is the timeline resolution actually. I'm not sure, it's half playback, it's full, so it is 4K timeline resolution and displays this long GOP without a problem. Here is also H.265 10-bit 422. What happens here? Again, GPU is used, and it plays 25 frames per second on MacBook Air M1, which is actually surprising. I think this new version of Davinci is much better optimized, but this is 420, 10-bit 420. 4 clips at the same time, but this is 422, so 10-bit 422 H.265. What happens here? It claims 25 frames per second, and seems so. It seems smooth, so it is then better than PC with Nvidia, which is kind of surprising. And you can see that the GPU is at 40-something%, 47, and the CPU is at 50, both E-cores and performance cores going up to 60, but it seems like it is all fine. What about graded clips? I mean, it's not all I, because it is totally different format, so ignore all I, but it's 265 10-bit 422 graded, and it plays 25 frames per second, although because it is graded, just the simple color transform, but it takes like 86% of the GPU now, but still plays that without a sweat, and it's 422 10-bit H.265 codec. So now Mac, even M1, seems to be better than anything with Nvidia. And here I got different clip in H.264 long GOP 10-bit 422. I'm actually not testing here, and it's not all I, it is long GOP, so not all I. Let me delete it. So this is long GOP 10-bit 422, and it is ungraded. So let's see if this plays all right. And unfortunately, no. You can see it's choppy, 18 frames per second, and if we check the performance, it eats all the CPU, so it seems that not the media engine is doing the heavy lifting, but it's just the CPU, so that's the problem. But this is the M1 so hard to say what will happen on any better Apple Silicon CPU, hard to guess. And also M4 have different media engines than M1, M2 and M3, so maybe they actually support H.264 long GOP 10-bit 422 decoding, but it is really hard to tell. So Mac, at least M1, is not an option, but I have to double check if M1 Air has media engines. But I also have a laptop with Intel 13th generation core processor, and that processor actually have quick sync functionality, which seems it could be, or it should be able to decode all of these formats I shown here via hardware. I'm not sure how good the decoder is there. So I will check in a second. I haven't checked it yet. I've seen this before, but I haven't checked the laptop. It was installing Davinci, so I will check. And what is actually quite useful, that on that laptop I have the performance of the CPU is more or less the performance I could get on my PC, but I would have the processor without this quick sync functionality because it would be AMD quite old, from 2021 I think, or end of 2020, so it is Ryzen 9 X5900. I think I would be able to test on the laptop both decoding performance with and without quick sync, because you can turn it off in Davinci, I think. So let's see the other laptop. I have to export this timeline to be able to import it there. Now this is the laptop with 13th gen Intel Core processor, so I have Intel Quick Sync, which in theory should decode any H.264 and H.265 codec, and I also have Nvidia, so I think that would fall down to Intel Quick Sync if Nvidia cannot handle it. So let's see. Yeah, okay, let's see. So this H.265 10-bit 422 ungraded, ignore all I, and 25 frames per second. So it was okay both on Mac and on my, it was okay both on Mac and my old PC. So nothing unusual here, and seems that Nvidia is doing the heavy lifting. Video decode Nvidia. What about 10-bit 422? Now Nvidia is not doing anything, but seems that now the built-in Intel graphic chip is doing heavy lifting, and you can see it is 25 frames per second and 10-bit 422 plays flawlessly. So there was a small hiccup when it was caching the files, but now it plays it flawlessly. So what about graded clip? So it is the same clips, but graded. So 10-bit 422, ignore all I, it is H.265. So let's see what happens here. 25 frames per second, and the Intel GPU is doing the decode, and it is like not even having a sweat. There is some hiccup, unfortunately. So I wonder what is the reason. There are some hiccups, but I can see that Nvidia is also working hard, but it's just the 3D part. And let me see what is the timeline resolution is full. So it is not that smooth. It is still better than my old PC, but it's not that smooth. But I wonder about the long GOP. So now it is long GOP 10-bit 422 ungraded, some random shitty clips. And let's see what it says. unfortunately, it is not smooth. It's like 4.5 frames per second. As you can see, it is ungraded, long GOP 10-bit422, and it seems like it's hard to tell what is doing. It's the CPU. So unfortunately, it seems that QuickSync does not support 10-bit422 H.264 long GOP because it's a CPU which is doing heavy lifting here. Very interesting. Very interesting. So here are actually more than, there are 2 decode engines, and for the Nvidia there is one, but maybe that's how Windows reported. So unfortunately, probably even if I upgrade my CPU to either faster AMD processor or Intel with QuickSync, it won't work because it does not work here. Let me check again. Maybe there was a problem with caching, but not really. It's 6 frames per second. So it is definitely struggling, and the CPU is just 100% utilized. 100%, which means it's not a solution also. I wonder if I turn off some clips, like maybe start turning off 2, if this would help. Yes, to a degree. Now, yeah. But still CPU is 67%. So it all depends how good there are also QuickSync. There is also QuickSync 2 in the newest core processors, but I think these processors are very expensive, so it's not a solution. So you can see that 2 clips are played with almost no sweat. I mean, the CPU is sweating, but with 3 clips, it is able to do it like 80–90% of the CPU. So for 10-bit 422 clips, but they are decoded by the CPU, and it is 13 gen Intel Core i5 13500H. So if this plays long GOP, it won't have any problem with OI. That's why I'm not testing OI here at all. But the problem is long GOP 10-bit422. Actually, the version of this processor does not decode this via hardware. That's very interesting. It seems like this 3 clips are not played really flawlessly. It's like 2 clips tops. So still, it seems like the only option is Mac. Maybe new Nvidia 50 series would be able to handle this. Maybe they have new decoder engines, I don't know. But at the moment, it seems that even the processor with QuickSync is not able to do it. I have the specs of this CPU here, and it supports Intel QuickSync video and blah blah blah. So the conclusion is really seems there is no hardware solution for that. So I have actually probably used the faster cards to be able to edit 10-bit422. So I have to buy additional V90 or CF Express cards to be able to to be able to actually record this and be able to edit this flawlessly. So it depends. If I have 2 streams of long GOP, it's not a big deal, but if I have more, then it might be problematic. This proves that actually there is no hardware solution for that problem, unless maybe M4 Mac is able to do it. Maybe M2 Mac or maybe even M1 Max is able to do it. Maybe M2, maybe M2 Ultra. They got more media engines, but I'm not sure that media engine in Apple Silicon is able to decode 10-bit 422. Maybe I would try to contact the support. And I also have M2 iPad Air, so maybe I could try it, Davinci on iPad, but might be the case that it's totally different platform, and maybe the media engines are not even there. I don't know, so it's hard to tell. But at the moment, all the hardware devices I have are not able to decode 4 streams of H.264 long GOP 10-bit 422, even ungraded. So it is kind of a bummer, but at least I've been able to test it before I bought additional CPUs. So I think I would buy now either Angel Bird new card, CF Express one, or to be a bit cheaper, buy V90 card from Kingston and still record all I, and that's it.
As proven in Davinci, Nvidia decoders do not support 10-bit 422 decoding in either H.264 and H.265, which is a real bummer. Seems Intel Quick Sync supports 10-bit 422, but only in H.265, which my Sony cameras are not able to record in 20p. And 24p is not a good choice here in 50Hz based country. I actually prefer to record 422 to have a better latitude in post, but I'm not sure what to do now. I have few options, and you too if you struggle with this. I can update my CPU to Ryzen 9 5900X, the fastest I can put into my mainboard, for around $250, but it's not guaranteed it would be fast enough for decoding long GOP 10-bit 422, especially if 4 streams are decoded at the same time. As shown, the 13th Gen i5 13500H was not able to handle even 3 streams of H.264. And this Intel CPU has a similar score in Geekbench 6 as the Ryzen 9 I can install into my PC. So it might be just waste of money. I would rather not want to update the whole PC, motherboard, CPU and RAM, because it would be much more expensive, but it's the second option, which might also not work, especially with older gen Intel CPU, as proven a few minutes ago. Even QuickSync was not able to help. Third option, unconfirmed yet, is to check how Apple Silicon media engines decode 10-bit 422. They definitely decode ProRes up to 444 via hardware, but I cannot find anything confirming they also decode H.264 or HEVC 422. My M1 is the most basic version of the CPU, and Apple Wiki claims that media engines were first introduced with M1 Pro and M1 Max chips. At least this name was used for the first time with them. If they actually can hardware decode 10-bit 422 streams, Mac Studio or MacBook Pro might be much better idea for editing such footage in Davinci Resolve. Again, few streams at once. Problem with Mac is that my 1440p monitors are not the best fit for Mac because of how Retina renders fonts. For Macs, 4K and higher resolution monitors are recommended. So it's going to be like 4K USD or even more upgrade to have everything like I have now with my PC. There is a fourth option, but it might be more expensive in the long run. It is to invest into fast media. So CF Express cards that do not overheat, or in V90 SD cards, which are actually 10 times more expensive than V30 cards. And V30s are compatible with long GOP 140 megabytes per second in Sony cameras, are also okay for Panasonic S5 long GOP. V60 would be actually okay for Sony All-I, but Sony artificially blocks 25p recordings in All-I to V60 cards, claiming you need V90 for it. You do, but only for 50 and 60p, and for 24p and 25p V60 would be enough, but it's blocked in the camera. Also, All-I footage takes 42% more disk space, so I would run out of space on my NAS 24% faster. And Budget Systems confirm all this information. I actually learned this via their webpage, that Nvidia does not support 10-bit 422 hardware decoding. I've included the link in the description. Actually, even Intel QuickSync does not support it, but I have an AM4 motherboard anyway, so only AM4 CPU is a cheap option for me if I do not want to change half of my PC. Now I would love to confirm if Apple Media Silicon engines support H.264 10-bit 422 hardware decoding, or maybe M4 CPUs are fast enough to decode it without the media engine, just with the brute computing force. You can see the Geekbench results for the CPUs I've used in the test and the CPU I can get for my current PC and in a new Mac. Seems like the M4 single core is 3 times faster than my current CPU and also 3 times faster in multi-core, at least in this synthetic benchmark. But Max seems to be a bit too expensive. I guess I would have to go the route with V90 or CF Express Type A cards and All-I recording. CF Express are more future-proof. I can use them in FX6 or FX6 Mark II if I even buy one, but they are like 40% more expensive than V90 SD cards. And there is a risk they will overheat in A7 IV like my current Per-Gear Prime 260GB card. The lesson here is, if your PC struggles with 10-bit 422 footage, it is the CPU fault, because RTX 20, 30 and 40 series does not decode this via hardware decoders, unfortunately. Moreover, since any PC-based hardware does not decode it via hardware decoders, at least in H.264 format. H.265 is a different story. Nvidia decodes 10-bit 422.0 and Intel QuickSync decodes also 10-bit 422, but it was not 100% smooth on the laptop I've just tested. So the stronger CPU, the better the chance you will have smooth playback. If you edit 1 or 2 H.264 streams, almost any modern computer can handle it. If you have 4 or more, then the problems start. Also, the hot news seems that new 50 series Nvidia cards will be able to decode 10-bit 422 codecs, but I cannot find if this also includes H.264 or it is just H.265. They haven't updated their specs page for NVDEX and NVENGs yet. And I have just called Apple support and they weren't able to answer my question if Apple Silicon media engines support H.264 in 10-bit 422. I hope that's helpful and cheers, mate!